Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Darshan Shah from Next Health, and we have an incredible guest here today who doesn't need any introduction, but Gabby Reece is here with us today.
Thank you.
And it is so phenomenal to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, well, it's my treat. We have a mutual friend,
Yes.
and he's such a good person that he's like, will you? And I was like, of course.
I hear that about you all the time. Like we know two mutual friends. They're both incredible people, and they both say the same thing about you. And, it's just that rule of the 8 people you surround yourself with, or the people you surround yourself with. Like, you just surround yourself with such good people all the time. And they always said the same thing about you. It's pretty awesome.
Well, I think, listen, my husband is a very good gatekeeper. Laird doesn't suffer fools very well.
Right.
But also, we both independently of one another and differently sort of realize that it's easier to try to be nice and kind. And it also actually makes your ability to be kind of heavy and brutal, that gear, even bigger.
Yeah.
And nobody really needs that gear very often. But when then you have it and you actually have to use it, you go, okay, I have it. So I think both of us have learned and do our best. Sometimes I miss here and there.
Well, I think we all do every once in a while.
Yeah.
Especially when you have young kids at home and raises the bar.
Oh, yeah, you're like, I haven't slept in 9 years.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, awesome. Thank you for coming out here
Thank
from
you for having me.
Malibu. So it's going to be really great talking to you. I'm also here with Kevin Peek, the co-founder of Next Health. And we have a bazillion questions for you, but I want to start, if you don't mind, just learning a little bit more about you. Where are you from, and what brought you out to California, and what are you doing now?
Well, I sort of grew up mostly in the Virgin Islands in the Caribbean. And then my junior year of high school, I was moved to Florida. I was sort of in that teenage angst time, and it's not really great to be in the Caribbean when you're going through that. And I got involved in sports and ended up going to Florida State on a scholarship and got it, sort of really fell in love with volleyball. And I didn't really have a lot of other options as far as, my family wouldn't have been able to send me to college, and I was 6'3", and they were like, we'll pay for your school, and you're kind of like, go to college. Like, that didn't even dawn on me. And after that, I started playing the beach game. And I was modeling simultaneously to playing college athletics. And when I was done with playing ball in school, I realized that I didn't want to just live in New York and pursue that. Again, being so tall, I had a very good career, but you're not as diverse as you could be. And I was well aware of the limitations. When you can't fit into any of the clothing, you probably are going to have a limitation. So I moved to California to pursue playing professional volleyball by the encouragement of another volleyball player. And I would say that my timing was quite good. I moved out and played 4-on-4 before I played 2-on-2. And I just kind of everything came together. I was doing that, and I signed a Nike deal, and that actually paid for my habit of playing professional volleyball, because that was a joke. It's like a lost leader kind of,
Yeah, exactly.
And just started doing other things, getting into television and writing and trying to communicate in other ways. And then I met my husband in 1995 and continued to compete. And my husband had a 4-month-old daughter so we had an instant family, even though we do it with her mother. And then I had my first biological, my second daughter, in 2003. And I always joke that Laird and I had to almost think we were going to get divorced before we decided to have more kids. So in 2000, we were like, oh, are we going to do it? Okay, let's stay together. Yeah, I think all couples have to experience that a few times. Like, are you sure? And then I since have always incorporated working. I always think what was easier for me is I had a very specific career, or even a few careers, before I started having children.
Right.
And then I just kept that fire small. I was of service to my family in a real way, but I just, sort of kept that flame going about my career just a little bit. And then I had another child in 2008, my third daughter. And so I've always managed like many different things. Like sometimes I'm Laird's wife, and just support him in our business. You know, I have no managers or agents. I just have a really good attorney, actually, whose office is right over here.
Oh.
And just sort of have the entrepreneurial side, put the family first, and then just me. And I think for me as a woman, that's been really important. And I think this is really important considering the business you're in, is I always tell women self-care is so important, because even if I only had 15 minutes when my children were very, very small to go train, I took it. And also I was ferocious about it. Like if my kids were big enough and there was no issue, really, I'd be like, beat it. Like, this is what I'm doing right now because I only have 15 minutes. Because I knew that I would be more productive and more impactful in all the other roles. And I think sometimes as moms, it's confusing.
Sure.
Like we don't know how to do it. Or if we have an hour, we'll say, oh, I'm going to go get my nails done. And what I always felt was better is like, actually it'd be better to sweat.
Yeah.
It'd be better to take care of yourself that way. I know they don't believe me, but I know it to be true.
Yeah. No, my wife and I have this conversation all the time because we have 2 kids, and I feel like moms, especially, you feel like you have to constantly give yourself to the children and the family all the time. And I said, you got to take care of yourself. Self-care is so important. And for men, it's just easier to do that. Like you just.
Well, you guys are one-track focused.
Exactly.
I'm going to work.
Right.
Like, call me if there's a fire.
Right.
You know, it's like I'm with the kids. And that's a beautiful thing. And I think both things complement each other.
Right.
But listen, being a mother, I don't know if guilt is just like a real part of it. Was I too tough on them? Was I not tough enough on them? Do I spoil them too much? Am I not? It's a constant calibration of that. And I don't think that dads suffer it quite as much.
Right.
And I just think that's where all the learning is.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, all that discomfort and being unsure pushes you. It's sort of like having an injury.
Right.
All the best things I learned about my body were because I was injured, not because I felt great.
Right.
You know, when you're winning or, you know, your team's doing well, you don't adjust anything.
Right.
It's when you're losing or it's not going well, your marriage isn't good. You go, okay, well, let's take a look at this. And so I think sometimes we could look at these as opportunities for really having a different understanding about our bodies, or with parenting. And my kids are older now. Like I have a grown daughter, I have a 15-year-old, and I have an 11-year-old. Let me tell you something. You might be tired right now because you have a 5 and a 2-year-old. When you have kids in transition, whether it's young adulthood or puberty, if you're willing, and it is a little bit like going through fire, you can learn a ton.
Oh yeah, I bet. It sounds mentally exhausting.
Well, you know what it is? And you guys are successful people.
Yeah.
It's really especially humbling for successful people because you'll have a kid who will say this in a version. So that way that you do everything that's worked for you and gotten you all these great things in your life and seems to have been the gear that works is your go-to, is completely wrong for me and the way you parent me. You know, so I have a daughter, for example. I'm, you know, pretty grindy, pretty linear, pretty, you know, and she's like, all those things that got you out of, I had a pretty tough childhood and stuff, all that stuff that got you and helped you win at volleyball and do all these things. Yeah, wrong.
Yeah.
And you can either say, wow, I feel defensive and I feel unsure and scared, or you can say, okay, I'll take a look at that.
Yeah.
And it's easier. It's sort of like apologizing.
Right.
Like when you get into a hassle with each other or your partner. Right. Sometimes instead of trying to defend, it's just easier to go, you know what? Okay. Mm-hmm. And so it's a great, certainly of all the things I've done, and I've done in some ways quite a bit of different, you know, jobs and stuff. Right. It's been the one.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's been the one.
I think my wife would agree with you on that one.
Oh, yeah.
This whole concept of self-care is so interesting, too. I just want to explore that a little bit with you.
Absolutely.
So have you always been someone that would dedicate a certain amount of time and energy to self-care? Or did you kind of, like what happened with me was I went backwards. I weighed 30 pounds
after
that I do
school,
now.
your medical school, and then your intern, like all that's residencies. Those things take. How do you survive that?
Maximal stress, least amount of self-care possible. And I just thought to myself, like, I'm a physician and I don't even know how to take care of myself.
Well, and you guys are the worst patients too.
We are.
By the way,
what's
wrong with Diet Coke?
Right.
It's fine. I'll take a pill for that.
Can I have a cigarette with that? But anyway, so it took me a while to realize that a self-care habit is so key for everyone on this planet. And that's one of the reasons we opened Next Health, was to give them that routine of self-care. So I'm just curious, when did you figure it out, or has it always been part of your life?
I came through the door of athletics. And so I think college, my diet wasn't lined up, but then I was moving. And then as you get really informed, because we all know really food is 85-90% of the deal once you're moving. And then once I got into the pros and I moved to California, where you have a lot of access to a lot of information, but it was still the early 90s where it was like, oh, it's just a carbohydrate. It's like, yeah, but how does that break down into your body? Oh, it's still glucose and sugar. And oh, okay, maybe that's not so good. And being really like a survivalist person. I think I moved out of my house at 17, and I've always been a person who thought I had to do it myself. Right. So I think that's a little bit part of it. And it felt like, well, being healthy and vital was going to be a better way or a better perspective to try to then manage everything. Right. And so I think I came through sports, but then what you realize that you love about sports is one of the things you loved was feeling good. Right. And also, like I stated earlier, it's like you have an injury, so what happens? You appreciate feeling healthy. Like when you can't walk from here to there on your own, all of a sudden you go, oh, wait a second. I don't need to get hit by lightning and told, by a doctor something serious to manage sort of an everyday discipline, to understand that the greatest asset we own is our health. Right. I mean, my family, I don't own them though. It's like, I think
and if you're not healthy, what can you do for them?
You can't. And so I think as a woman, this is one thing I didn't battle with. I think in a way I had like a kind of a lot of lack of parenting, which in one way served me so well because I was never taught obligation. And so as a female and then coming in through sport, I was like, oh yeah, of course I'm going to train and take care of myself, and that's okay. And I think I've always had that. And then I just realized I was just better in every way. I was a nicer person. I was more productive at work. I was a better partner. And quite frankly, it's like we're here for a minute, even though it's quick. Yeah. And I thought, how do I stay connected to who I feel like I am? And one of those ways was to create a self-care practice. Yes. And then as you get older, you see the divide in the road. So I'll be 50 next January. And so
happy birthday.
Thank you. I guess. I mean, it's like a marker, right? But the point is, like 35 and 40, all of a sudden you see the departure. Right. Who's living one way, who's living another. I call it the rock star syndrome. You see guys that are living so radical and you're like, how do they do it? And then they turn 40 and you go, oh, okay, there it goes. Yeah. And so I think the other part of me was, I know that time is inevitable, but the notion of slow aging or maximizing, each sort of year and one's kind of overall physical and mental and emotional and spiritual health. Exactly. I felt like, oh, you could participate in that. So many things you can't participate in, but that you could.
Yeah, you can definitely affect it.
And don't apologize for that. I'm not sure, your male to female ratio, but if I could encourage women, there's a couple things I do. I don't like to get sweaty. I'm not an athlete. Everyone else. It's like, hey, listen, your house can be imperfect. We're all athletes. And I always said the best accessory was a smile and a firm ass. It's kind of like better than like, did you see my new, whatever purse? It's like that comes and goes. Right. But if you could, deposit some of that energy into just you. Right. I don't know. It's just, it's better. Yeah. And you can take a firm ass everywhere with you. You can take it everywhere.
No one can steal it from you.
And I didn't say a perfect ass or a perfect smile. Right. I just say that to me, when I meet people and they look like they have, again, vitality. Yes. It isn't looking 20.
Right.
It's looking alert and
Exactly.
excited about life and interested, and that you feel good. Those things they go beyond age and beauty.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think health, it just has a radiance about it that's just naturally beautiful. It doesn't
Yeah.
meet a stereotype. It's just if you're healthy, you give off that energy
Yes.
that people want and inspires other people.
Yeah.
Gabby, I'd love to ask you, I feel like you and Laird are such an incredible, number one, a power couple.
Oh.
It doesn't get much better than, seriously, what you guys have created in your life and in your career, and you've inspired a tremendous amount of people. And in talking about self-care, what you guys have been doing and what you have access to, for us really with Next Health, almost what we've done is kind of try to tap into the things that you guys have had access to
Yes.
for a long time and have really helped promote and push the boundaries of what's possible within health, wellness, optimization, if you want to say biohacking to an extent,
Sure.
to try to bring these services into a facility and then make them accessible to the masses. Take highly complicated services and administer them in very simplistic formats so people have access and can really take charge of their own health. So what I'd love to just hear, what is it that you guys have been doing? What's been most impactful for you over the last couple of years? What have you seen in that from that lens?
Well, and also I just want to say that for me, as a person who respects that people don't have time and they don't have extra, assets, whether it is time or finances or know-how to navigate this process, I think it's amazing that they can come to a place like Next Health and say, okay, I'm going to have my blood drawn. I'm going to get informed. I'm going to be my own best advocate.
Right.
Because I think that's the number one thing, is making people feel like, hey, listen, it is confusing, and how do I muddle through it? But you have to be your own advocate. Because that's the thing for me about healthcare is in a way, it's sort of set up like, okay, I'm the authority as the doctor, and I'm going to tell you, where the other side of this too that is so appealing, and I think this is something that Laird and I have been big on for years and years, is just the maintenance and the prevention side of it. That's all. And the problem with prevention is it's sort of unsexy in that way. It's like you don't really see it. Right? So it's one thing when you go, oh, I had this surgery or I took this pill. There's something sort of drastic in that.
There's no instant gratification.
Not really.
Right.
But prevention is also like, hey, you're in charge, and it's a little bit at a time, that over time you could avoid very big issues or move towards things that give you a life full of enjoyment and freedom, physical freedom and things like that. So
Exactly.
I get excited about that for people, because it shouldn't just be for athletes or exclusive CEOs that kind of are looking for an edge and they know, and things like that. So I really appreciate that. But for Laird and I, listen, there's certain things that are pillars for all time. Laird goes to bed at 8:30 every night. And for a lot of people, that's not realistic, and I totally appreciate that. But the point is that he has made that a priority, and he makes the whole family. He pulls us all earlier. If it was me, because I am a female, it's like, well, I could get this done and that done. And when the kids were really little, it's like, oh, they're sleeping. Let me get everything buttoned up for the next day. It's like, so he has made that a priority. So that's what happens. And I think sometimes people go, well, I can't do that. Well, no, you haven't made that a priority. So sleep is a big one. Obviously, hydration is so interesting because we talk about it a lot, and everyone's walking around with a water bottle, hopefully not plastic.
Yeah.
And are we really doing it correctly? Are we really absorbing the water that we're getting? Do we have the correct minerals in the water? So even that alone, if someone could go to a place and go, well, what does that mean? Is salt, the right salt, actually going to help me really be hydrated? Which, by the way, makes all my body function better, right? Digestion, all your organs, your skin, your sleep, your flexibility. I mean, it just goes on. And people go, oh, yeah. And most of us are dehydrated,
Yep.
right? So I think there's certain things that we're not doing any different, that we've been doing a really long time. Neither one of us. I did this talk once, and I was in Canada. It was pretty funny. And I could see the ladies were like, oh, Gabby, we like you. And then they're like, oh, do you drink alcohol? And I'm like, not really. And we were in Canada, and they were like, oh, boo.
We don't want to hang with you.
And so I think it's just about knowing where some of the pitfalls or the landmines are, and saying, okay, I like that glass of wine, or I like that Friday night release or whatever. Okay, that's cool. So what are you doing then to counterbalance that. So for me, it's not, and I don't do those things because I have a moral issue with it. It's just not for me. And my entire adult life, I've never really been a big drinker. And in fact, Laird was a very big drinker. And then 12 years ago was like, oh yeah, this is probably not going to serve the long game of my life, and stopped. Because Laird doesn't do anything sorta. And, when people go, oh, they're such a happy kind of drunk. Yeah, no. Laird was like a killer, you know what I mean? And I was like, whoa. So, he removed that. So some of the other things that we're doing, though, like you guys have your cryo chamber here, which is excellent. Because let's say, for example, someone's got to work and they just have a little bit of time. This is a great solution. We have heat and ice, dry sauna, and a real ice tub. Which, even though I know cryo is colder, I'm going to tell you right now, getting into an ice tub, and I have people all the time, oh, you should try cryo. I've done cryo. I like cryo. But I'm telling you, getting into an ice tub
way harder
is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But okay, so you asked me, what are some of the things we're doing that's exciting? I think it's important for people in a healthy way to do things that are uncomfortable.
Right.
It is so important each day, because then you're staying connected to sort of like your spirit or your primal side of yourself, and saying, I'm scared to do that. I'm uncomfortable to do that. And I can manage it. So you just keep expanding that envelope. So we do that. We do a lot of underwater pool training. And the reason I like that is there's less impact on your joints. And so it gives you an opportunity to train outside and be ballistic in a more weightless environment. And it's hard. So what happens is you start the exercises, and sometimes you're almost right in stress already. And in that moment, your brain has to go, I have to make good decisions. So again, it's not about like, I'm training and banging iron. It's like, maybe this will help me when I'm out in the world. Go, oh, I feel like I'm going to kill somebody. And now I have to manage myself. I have to manage my decision-making, my responses, and such.
Right, because I feel like underwater training is more of a mental challenge than it is a physical challenge.
Exactly. And so it's that, and so that just helps us stretch in life, because I think if someone were to see Laird and I and they think, okay, meatheads, let's, throw weight around and like do this stuff. It's like, okay, for Laird, he's still pursuing riding large waves. For me, it's what things can I do to continue the pursuit to expand myself and improve myself as a person. And I think people don't realize that as you get older, you certainly have the opportunity to improve. You won't get younger, but you can improve or be better in some way. And you can also use your physical training to do so. So, we were talking earlier about NAD. We've experimented a little bit with that. And so there's a few different things that we're doing that I really like, but it's weirdly sort of saying, okay, we're going to stay open to all modalities and new ideas, but there's just a very specific repetitive practice that you have to build upon.
Right.
Sure.
That, let me tell you, it's not sexy.
Right.
It isn't.
The whole concept of stressing your body with either underwater workouts or heat or cold. I mean, there's so much science around that now about how that stresses your mitochondria, and your mitochondria need that little bit of stress. And that's what keeps your mitochondria healthy, functional, and also expanding in number and what they can do. So you guys have tapped into that for a while. I mean, you've been doing the heat sauna and the cold therapy as part of I think it's called XPT. Is that what you guys call it?
Yeah. So we have something called XPT, and it's it's sort of just a little bit of a mini version of some stuff that we've experimented with for 12 years on some of the very specific stuff. And for people at home, I will say this, like you hear all this talk about meditation, and meditation is a very ancient practice. Sure. I always joke about like people go organic or bone broth, and someone's grandmother somewhere is like, these idiots,
Exactly.
like, oh, woo, bone broth, it's like, so I think it is that stripping away and that simplification, because it is confusing. So the notion, even like black pepper,
right?
I never know if it's bioperine or bioperine. What are we saying?
Bioprene.
Okay. Okay.
Let's go with Bioprene.
So what does that help you absorb? Like turmeric, like 2,000%
exactly.
more or whatever. So really, do we add salt and pepper in our food because it tasted good? No, they probably were doing it to absorb nutrients.
Right.
And so I think sometimes with people, they go, it's so confusing. It's probably not that confusing. Keep it simple. Food is the king, unfortunately, because it's the hardest. You got to do it all the time. It's emotional. We do it to celebrate. We do it when we're sad. We do it when we're bored, all these things. But the other thing I would encourage people to look at, because the meditation is important for the neuroplasticity of your brain. And like, I even feel it now where I'm like, well, I see their face. I cannot remember their name. It's like, the overflow of information, the file cabinets are starting to get full. So where do you get this little space? And people, I don't have time for that. Right. Even with like a headspace or something, they guide you through it. It takes no time at all. But the other thing is the breathing. We're big on that in XPT because we're all breathing wrong. We're mouth breathing.
Right.
We should be nose breathing.
Right.
I had it explained very simply to me. CO2, if you hold your breath, the first thing you experience, you think, oh, I'm out of breath. I need air. No, you don't. You have an intolerance to CO2. So what you have to do is, for people sitting at home, is if you can breathe, unless you've just done a sprint, with your nose in and out, deep into your diaphragm and up. First, number one, it keeps you in your parasympathetic. Relax. Great. You're not in fight or flight all day long. Cool. But now your CO2 is rising. Even better, because the oxygen now that's in your bloodstream can actually get absorbed into the tissues and cells because you have the presence of CO2. If you're walking around mouth breathing and scrubbing your CO2 all day long, which is what free divers do to override the impulse to breathe, you actually can never absorb your oxygen. So for people who, I always say the thing I love about breathing, it's free and you can do it anywhere.
Right.
So true.
And it's important. So really easy patterns I tell people is they can do 7 seconds in, so into the belly button, then the ribs open, and then up into the lats, kind of a 3-part breath, and then gently bring the belly button to the spine. Because a lot of times people get into compression. You want people to think about, oh, I'm expanding. Even in the exhale, just 7s in and out. After about 3 minutes of that, you will go into your parasympathetic. So if you've had a long day, if you're getting ready for bed, if you're driving in your car, you can do things like that. And that's just the most basic. They have all these big apnea, breath holding, all these things. Right. But if we could actually learn to breathe correctly, we could manage so many things. And it would be very good for our health.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny, like, you mentioned breathing and then, having turmeric with pepper and meditation. Like, these are all ancient practices that have been around forever.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, just take it back, strip away all the blogs that you're reading, strip away all the craziness that you hear about all the time. Just take it back to the ancient practices and you're going to be doing the right thing for the most part.
I think so. And I think it's also understanding that, like, that's why I like knowing about biology. So when people get into a situation where they're overeating, especially like engineered food that's meant to make you overeat it, and you go, oh, what's wrong with me? Why do I eat this? It's like that impulse is actually correct, because a long time ago, if you got something to eat, get it whatever you can get. We just don't live in that world anymore.
Right.
So people, I think, are in this constant thing of like self-loathing, and I have no discipline, and I can't. Why do I do that? I feel like once they understood, like, it's all okay, but what do you want to do, and how do you have a system? That's the other part. What you guys have this in your own lives. What system do you put in place so that you can be successful? Right. Laird and I don't get out of bed each day going, I can't wait to train. I can't wait not to eat, chips. It's just we have a system in place, and we spend time with other people that help support that system. And so I always think to people, like, if you could have daily practices, and if there's anyone in your life that is not supporting this practice or these goals, then they got to go.
Yeah.
It's not, and if it's your kids, they're not going anywhere, but everyone else, it's on the table.
Exactly. I was going to ask you, you said you have a system. When you say system, do you mean like a daily ritual or a daily practice, or is it more of a bigger thing, a global thing?
Give us the secret.
I call it the breadbasket decision. It's very simple. When you go to a really good restaurant, chances are they have very good bread. that they will put down first, which is to assuage you, make you feel full before your real food comes. It's there for a number of reasons.
I failed already. I know where it's going.
Okay. No, so if let's say I've had a crazy day. I mean, you're seeing my together, thoughtful self right now. I'm a human being. I drive around. I yell at, drivers who drive slow on the left lane. It should be in the right lane. And, I'm a human being.
Yeah.
And so I always say, on the days I get caught by surprise, I haven't decided before I sat down at the table, I'm not going to eat the bread, even if I'm starving, like I'm really hungry. So I say that about everything, where it's sort of like, when I know I'm on top of it, the bread comes, I've already decided. Because I have no shot if I try to make the decision in the moment when I'm smelling it.
Yeah.
I got no chance. Same with the grocery store. If I go into the grocery store, not saying I can't eat X, Y, and Z, I just don't. I'm in charge. I have the power. I'm not feeling defiant or like someone is denying me something. I just switch the verbiage and go like, yo, I'm in charge. And I'm not going to eat that. I am going to eat that. And by the way, having said all that, if you come to a place where it's the best homemade truffle ravioli in the planet, whatever, eat it, enjoy it. Don't beat yourself up for it. But it's not part of your everyday life.
Right.
And with my children, I actually don't have a lot of things in my home, but nothing is off limits because I don't want them to have issues. Because humans are funny, right?
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't look at my finger. Right. Don't look at my finger. We're just built that way.
Yep.
So why not? So those systems is that self-language, the system of when I'm here, I teach a class for my friends for free and on Kauai for $1, 3 days a week. Why? So I have to go. I do it for them, but I do it for myself, accountability. Because, believe me, I'd have a list of emails I'd need to respond that would get me off the track, and my training time would come and go, and then I'd be on to something else. The people around me, they're trying. And when I see them, if I'm feeling slack, I go, oh yeah, I'm in it. So the system has to be in everywhere.
Right.
And again, it takes discipline, and it isn't fun. But I can't remember who said it. Maybe it was Jocko. He works with with Tim Ferriss, not under. Yeah. He substitutes his podcast, and he now has his own very successful. And he said something about like discipline is freedom.
Right.
And for me, I've experienced it enough times to go, okay, I've bought in, and taking the emotion out of it. The problem is like you probably have people here come all the time where they just haven't experienced that freedom yet, and they haven't bought into it. And so sometimes people think, oh, I'm sad. Oh, I'm tired. No, you're not eating stuff that's supporting you. You're actually probably not sad.
Right.
And there are people who are sad. I'm not saying that. But just getting them where they don't even know what it feels like to feel good,
Exactly.
And that's important. And being an athlete, by the way, a lot of times I don't feel good. But not here and in my stomach. It's my knee. It's my back. You're always beat up. So I'm not talking about that.
Right.
I'm talking about that sense of like, there's a level of homeostasis and sort of balance, and I can kind of manage most of the things coming at me day in and day out, that kind of stuff.
Right, absolutely. So, you guys travel a lot, probably, right? Or do you try to stay
in spurts? But we try to we're very dedicated to when we have the routine, keep the routine. But also when you have the travel, it's very good to get out of your life.
Yeah. Right.
And just look at it a little different.
Yeah.
So combo. But if for like business people, that's a different story. They have to, and it's hard, and they're in hard environments. So that's where I always say, like, I would eat less if I was a traveling business person. I would try to see if I could get it down to a meal a day. And I would stretch and breathe and move in my hotel room. I wouldn't necessarily go on the treadmill at 5:30 in the morning.
For sure.
Because that may not be serving them. It just depends.
And do you and Laird have the same routine, or do you have yours and he has his, and you guys work around it? Yeah, okay.
We're husband and wife. Are you crazy? Don't kid yourself.
Got it.
And by the way, what Laird wants to put himself through is not what I want to put myself through. For Laird, it's almost like it's self-medicating.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, testosterone is a real, and I honor it. Okay. It's a real thing. And it's sort of like, oh, these guys that are drinking this and doing that. Yeah. They're self-medicating because they haven't shot the energy load and the testosterone out.
Sure.
So Laird is very clear that he needs to put himself, again, in a healthful way into a lot of stress to function as a normal human being here on an earth that doesn't make sense to him. Because your biology, you guys know this 50 times better than I do, has not changed, period. Your genomes haven't changed.
Right.
The world around us has.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
how do we manage that? I mean, just because we're on the phone and we can do this and we can go 100 miles an hour and fly in airplanes at 30,000 feet, it doesn't mean, what do they say? Just because it's normal doesn't mean it's good.
Right.
So you still have all these very primal biological things, men even more than women, that you've got to manage. And it wasn't meant to like behave, walk in line, go to bed at 1 a.m. It was come up with the sun, go down with the sun, work your ass off all day long, be so tired that you couldn't fight or drink yourself into under any table.
Exactly.
And get up and go do it again and hope that you live to like 40, 50.
So true.
So I think that people blame themselves for certain feelings, but if they could actually look at what they're having to manage from their biological standpoint and then see where they could slip some of that in throughout their day, it makes the other stuff easier.
Right. No, it's so true. And we've only had this existence for the last 100 years. And before that, it was still like, you had to fight to stay alive, right?
Yeah.
And so we still have all those genetic tendencies. And I love what you say. You have to accept those and not shame yourself for those tendencies. Absolutely.
Right. And I think the challenge is most people, this is our normal today.
Yes.
We have no reference point of what it used to be in the caveman days, in the primal days. So now we have these feelings, these urges that were primal urges, but in today's society where it doesn't line up, or all the stresses. I mean, we get stressed today, which your body still reacts to stress like it's dealing, with lions and tigers and bears.
Yeah.
But, it's nothing. It's someone cutting you off, or it's a little insignificant thing, but your body's going to respond. Certain people, are going to have the same response internally.
Yeah.
That creates all this chaos and a heightened level of stress that, results in negative thoughts, inflammation, and everything else that becomes toxic internally and turns into chronic disease over time. So I think I totally agree with what you're saying. And I think the key is starting with the awareness and making people realize about the biology and the physiology of where we are today.
Yeah. And I think, listen, we're lucky. Laird and I are very fortunate because I grew up, like I said, on an island, and Laird grew up in a very primal way on Kauai in a valley. Hunting and almost drowning on a daily basis. And has a real direct reference. So I really appreciate if you're born into a city and live in a city and your father's from a city, well, how do you get this reference?
Right.
But I think there's so much information out there that if if it becomes important, it's just how do you kind of structure a new life today that genuinely reflects you, but still does take that into consideration, because we're not getting away from that. I mean, we can act like we are, and, Elon Musk might be digging a tunnel, and Mars might be a conversation, but guess what? We're not.
Humans are still humans.
We're not getting away from it.
Right.
And, slowly things are changing. Parts of our, frontal lobe are changing, and maybe our eye size is going to change. Who knows? But we're not there.
It's going to take a few generations at
I'd
least.
say.
Exactly. So, you were talking earlier about getting biomarkers measured and blood tests done.
Oh, yeah.
And, I know you guys do some of this on a regular basis. And one of our goals at Next Health is to make, like you were talking about earlier, we want people to be the CEO of their own health. They need to understand their numbers. They need to know why they're important. And like you said, I came from the traditional medical world where you have to ask me for a blood test, and I'm not even going to explain it to you. I'm just going to look at it and tell you, what, everything's normal. Come back to me when you're sick.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. That's why we started Next Health, was to give people the tools that they need to get the biomarkers done, give them the education they need to know what they're looking at, and then give them the tools they need to improve their biomarkers. So the reason I bring all this up is because you did tell me that you follow some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, are there some numbers that you look at or Laird looks at that you guys are really focused on? Or is it just in general, do you have like a panel that you get tested every year or something?
It just depends, where we are. And by the way, I think offering that, like Next Health offering that to people, because like you guys were saying, the metrics, like people really like the numbers, and maybe they'll be like, okay. And then next time I come, I can check my numbers and they'll be different. So I really appreciate that for people. For me personally, like I didn't have and I always tell people, if they're not feeling good or whatever, I go, just go get your blood work done. Start there. Get real information. Look under the hood. Well, ding dong me, hadn't gotten my blood work done for 4 years or something. Because that's the other thing too. Like, I'm kind of on top of it, so I'm sure everything is fine. And I came back and I was anemic. Right. And I was relieved because I had been feeling my output in my training has been, in my mind, a little bit pathetic. And so I really use that to help me not only, I got a small protocol and no wonder I was grabbing citrus.
Mm-hmm. Right.
For 7 months, I have been like a weirdo citrus eater. And it makes sense because it helps carry the iron and do all these
your
things.
Your body was telling you it needed iron.
Yes.
Right.
And so it gave me, like the motivation to be more diligent about certain things and how to get back on track. But it also gave me that hope.
Right.
Like, I don't have to feel tired. And I think for people that can be in charge of their health, like you're talking about, is also you go, hey, it's not perfect, but now I have a understanding, I can put a plan in effect, and that makes me hopeful, which makes me more compliant, which is the upcycle. And so for me, as far as like other markers, honestly, I'm always checking out my hormones.
Yeah.
I know that's not great, but I have a pretty good, everything else is pretty good. Right. And so I'm always watching my hormones and making sure those are working, and, your thyroid and things like that. Yeah. The other thing that's been interesting for me is I always, since I was very young, had high cholesterol, good and both LDL and HDL, and everything was good. But then I've gone to lectures where they say that actually is not a marker for cardio health, right? So I'm always interested in these people. They go to the doctor, they say, oh, well, you got to get your cholesterol down. Or maybe your good and bad cholesterol are equal. So it's working out. Maybe you don't process cholesterol great through your liver. Who knows, right? And then people go, oh, my heart. It's like, oh, yeah, no, those are not the markers. So it's even that, like, we've trusted, we have all this information. Yeah. And so I'm always interested in getting people even to understand some of the fundamentals of what they should be paying attention to.
Sure. Yeah, and I think people have outsourced that to their physician in their yearly exam, and has done nobody any good, because your doctor has 10 minutes to see you, and unless something is like circled in red by the laboratory, you're not even going to notice it.
Yeah.
And so we talk about optimizing your levels, like you're saying, hormones. We're all genetically programmed in our late 30s to start dropping testosterone, dropping estrogen. And if you don't know that's happening, you're going to start having symptoms and you don't know what's causing it. And the lab range says it's normal, but it's not. Right. It's really the trend that you're looking at.
Interesting.
So when you're following your hormone levels, are you doing anything to actively manage that?
I haven't. Well, now it's funny. That's why I got my blood work done, was because I was going to look into, because I was saying I don't want to fall off a hormone cliff.
Right.
And I'm aware of my age and aware enough. I don't care how healthy I am. You have to be realistic. Right. And so that's initially why I was like, I've got to get my blood work done. And so I'm going to manage my iron first, kind of get things, and then really explore looking at, some type of hormone therapy, because I do train hard. And, I've never been a great sleeper. I always said I grew up sleeping with one eye open, and then it almost became two once I had kids. So that's something, for example, I'm always managing. I might be in bed early, but I'm always managing trying to get good sleep. Right. So am I taking magnesium before night? I've tried all kinds of things, because I'm so aware of how important the sleep is and how that would impact my hormones.
Sure.
Right. And sometimes, like for women especially, I want to say, okay, if I can't get you from this idea of like feel better, be more productive, then guess what? your skin will glow better.
Exactly.
And you'll probably have less cellulite, and your weight will be managed.
Right.
Like, you can throw that in there too.
Sure.
Because that's all part of it. And
Absolutely.
and you can't starve yourself to it. You can't go to the plastic surgeon yourself to it. These are things that will, I think, help this notion of slow aging even more if you could manage this little nuanced part, because it's always from the inside out.
Absolutely.
It just is.
Absolutely.
You're not going to slap it on and be like magic cream.
Right.
It just,
I wrote a book about that, right? Did I tell you about this?
What? Which one?
So I was, I call myself a recovering plastic surgeon.
I know about your but listen, I think there's a great place for that. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, no. But what I did was I was seeing so many people that were unhealthy wanting to use plastic surgery as a fix for being unhealthy.
Yeah.
And it was getting to be ridiculous. And I would coach people out of not doing the surgery and instead like getting their health in order.
Yeah, but that took an hour of your time.
Right, exactly. Mm-hmm. And so I wrote a book called Making the Cut, 10 Reasons You Shouldn't Have Plastic Surgery, because really I narrowed it down to 10 things you need to do before you get a procedure done. And
what did you say?
So it's all about nutrition.
Yeah.
It's all about getting your health into the right place, and then also getting mentally into the right place. I think there's a lot of mental health that you need to work through before you do or consider doing plastic surgery. People don't even think about this.
Well, that's, you'll be 100 times more successful. And I think that's an important thing, right? Like, for you as someone who this is your occupation and you're almost working what would be perceived as against yourself, but you're actually being responsible, you will only be more successful in the long run because you're like, okay, I know, and I'm going to do that, even if for right at this moment it was 1 less surgery or 50 less surgeries, because in the long run, it's going to be better. But I'm curious, like, give me an example of a surgery that somebody would have, like, to feel more healthy, like.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess the way I would present it to people is a lot of people want to get like lipo or tummy tucks done when they're morbidly obese, and they also have all the metabolic syndrome type of stuff going on from being obese. So their sugars are high, their blood pressure's out of control. They're just in the wrong place. And when I tell them, like, we can remove that fat and sew it together, but in reality, all that you've done is mask the problem, and the problem that you really have is inflammation. Inflammation is the root cause of all the disease that's happening in our society, and let's turn that around first, because that'll fix everything from the inside, and then your outside's going to look better. And then it's like the top 5% when you're doing NAD or biohacking stuff. Like, once you get there, then we can do the plastic surgery to get that last 5%. Yeah. So that's how I frame it to people. So
but that's also modern in itself, because for someone to come from that occupation and say, oh, let's get everything in order, it's pretty great.
And my colleagues are not very happy about the book.
But we live in a day and age in the contrast where it's like, well, if I just put a filler on it, or 20-something-year-old girls that are, I'm like, no, you're beautiful right now. And also, we don't fully know yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what's happening, and but I do say, I mean, this is a terrible thing, but I will tell you this. I have told her, because Laird's like, please don't start messing with your face. We call it chasing the face,
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, but if my neck goes, I said, you will drive me to the doctor.
I love
and
it.
we will yank that. Yeah. And he's always like, and I'm like, yeah, no, I'm serious.
I'm not messing with this.
No. But I don't actually have an issue with it. It's just like you said, if it's mentally from the right place, then it is an enhancement.
Right, exactly. And look, at Next Health, we do this stuff. We have an entire division called Next Beauty, where we have a really set process that I've developed over like 20 years on evaluating someone's skin and their face and helping them through because part of feeling young is then you want to see that in the mirror, right?
100%.
And so we can help people with that, but all the other stuff has to come first, right?
Yeah. I'm going to check it out. I'm serious too.
Okay, cool.
Because I'm there. I mean, I rested so long on my genetics, because my dad was from Trinidad, so half West Indian, half British, and so a little bit darker skin. and being pretty healthy. And then now time, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I could put a little energy into that too. No, but I think it's, the other side of that too is like, when I start taking myself very seriously or things start to bother me, I realize like, this probably isn't really such a big deal.
Yeah, exactly.
And that goes also to the other side. I mean, part of the reason you guys are busy people who have missions that you've created. That's the other part of health. Yes. I think purpose, sense of purpose. So not only connection, so we have these connections, right, but purpose. And women sometimes, because we do have families, and you won't see this in your wife because she still has purpose outside of being your wife and their mother, right, that how do we, in any small way, maintain a sense of purpose and contribution of some sort. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be something that gets a paycheck. Just something that you go, yes, I'm contributing. Because I think that really is all part of that pie of health or well-being, or, feeling like you look good or things like that.
Well, I read recently the book on Blue Zones. Have you read Blue Zones? Great book. But one of the core components of the centenarians is the fact that they all had a sense of purpose. Right? There's no such thing in these communities as retirement homes, or even really retiring. They don't even have a word for that in their language. And whereas here we throw someone in a retirement home, where in these cultures they're revered. You're over 100 years old. You're like a celebrity in the community. Everyone looks up to you. You're the matriarch of the family. You're teaching the kids, you're passing on your knowledge. You have such a strong sense of purpose. You don't want to die because you have so much to give back. Whereas we throw someone in a retirement home and we don't even visit them. Right. So it's the complete opposite. And it really seems to be like that's one of the most common threads in these various blue zones around the world, is that they all share in that.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that, because also that's another thing that we have very strong in our house, and it's not on purpose, but nobody in our house or comes through our gates says, well, I am this age, so I can't do that. Nobody talks like that. Right. They'd be kicked out.
It's a bad word.
And every once in a while we get like a 20-something-year-old and we're just like, yeah, be quiet, let's go. Or it's that great juxtaposition too of like a very young athlete will come and train with somebody 20, 30 years older, and in these ways they can't keep up. So what you're telling the young athlete is, so when I'm older, I can do that. And what the older athlete is experiencing is, I'm still doing pretty good. So there's this great reciprocal thing happening. I would be curious, from your point of view, let's say someone's listening to this and at this moment they don't have access to a place like this. Right. How do you direct them on the most fundamental level to say, hey, do you want to start the process of being in charge of your health?
Right. So this podcast is part of that. So, we talk a lot about how can you take some of the things we're talking about and say you're in the middle of, Iowa, let's use as an example.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, how do we get you there? So, like you said, 85% of it is what you put in your mouth, right?
Yeah.
And that 85% is not going to be right if you're not moving around. So we got to get you moving, got to get the right things in your diet. But then we also talk about each one of the tests that we do that are available at your doctor, that you just got to insist on these things.
Okay.
And we also tell them, a lot of this stuff now is available as a home test kit. And you can do a lot of this testing at home as well. I think it's all about education. And I also believe that people are throwing so much stuff at them nowadays. Like you get a blog and then a news article comes to you and it's like really just touching the surface and not giving you good information. We're all about just teaching and informing people. So we curate the knowledge, we make it understandable, and then we tell them where they can get it in their own communities as well.
Amazing.
So, and like you said, like you're doing stuff at XPT, like you have a heat sauna and you have a cold plunge. Like there are heat saunas and cold plunges all over the place. So you can make one. Just get few bags of ice in your bathtub and you can do this too, right?
Yes.
So I think a lot of this stuff you don't need a fancy cryo chamber. You can easily approximate this stuff anywhere. It's just knowing that it's beneficial and how to do it, basically.
And it's consistency. It's not hours and hours each day.
Right.
It's just try to be, I think, consistent.
Right.
And like you said, I think the information, like even for us, like for example, healthy fats, right? Like people go, okay, we're not afraid of fats anymore. Apparently it was a thing between the sugar business and the fat business and whatever, Harvard study, something. But what's interesting is that is all fine and dandy, but actually better not to consume the healthy fats with carbohydrates.
Yep. Exactly.
So it's even that. So if people are at home going, I'm not going to be afraid of avocado oil or olive oil or ghee or anything like that, but better to not have it with the sweet potato.
Right.
Better to keep it with vegetables and animal protein. So I think it's even those little things where even when people are trying to make the right choices, it's making sure that they understand,
Right.
And it goes back to what you were saying, which are the pillars of health.
Right.
Take you and Laird, for example, who've access to probably anything you want to within medicine and, health optimization. But the majority of what you are doing is all the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And it's, having the knowledge of knowing what these fundamental pillars are and then doing them consistently.
Yeah.
And here at Next Health, what we've tried to do is then curate everything so people have instant, easy access. But even if you're in some place in the world where they don't have it, as Dr. Shaw was saying, our goal is to present that information, educate people as much as possible.
Right.
And it might not be as convenient to find, but you can still seek it out if you really want it.
Right.
And that's the 10% that's the over and above. Like the 80-90% is what you were saying of the fundamental pillars, right? If you're doing all that stuff right, then the icing on the cake is what we offer at Next Health.
Well, even for someone like me, honestly, where you have peaks and valleys in your motivation, to come to a place like this where I feel like I gave myself propped up and a boost, and it's almost like not cheating, but you sort of sometimes feel like, maybe I just kind of jumped ahead of the line 4 steps, because when you're just grinding out all the time the basics,
right?
It does feel good.
For sure.
And it is shiny and it is nice. Yeah. And also some of it can be reconfirming. So when you get your blood work done, it's like, okay, you are on the right path, or you know what, that's good. This could be better. Right. All those kinds of things for sure.
We want to take advantage of all the advancements that have happened. We know we've learned more in the last 5 years about the human body than we have in all of human history.
Right.
So there's a lot we can do with that knowledge. There's a lot that we could do with the advancements in technology. So of course we want to harness that and utilize that. And we want to extend the human lifespan and health span for as long as humanly possible. So, in order to do that, you're going to have to layer on some of this on top of those fundamental pillars.
Right. Yeah. I'm down. Yeah. Like I said, I'm not just coasting on my hard work and genetics. I'm starting to look ahead, and it's always about sort of saying, it's like when people go and eat, or, okay, so I could do this very second, but how's that going to impact me later? And I also think even managing your health is going, hey, I'm doing pretty good right now, but let me start to anticipate and let me do some research and see what other things are out there that could help. And I can put in sort of my kit, if you will, whether it's a blood test every year to check your markers or what have you. And just those kinds of things. And I think it's always like, okay, here and what is available up ahead. And the other thing I would say too for people is like, do everything slowly. Mm-hmm. No, not a blood test, but something like that. There's been so many things we've experimented, Laird and I, because the worst thing would be is that it didn't do anything.
Right.
And I don't mind doing that.
Yeah.
Like, you know what, I've done the work. It's interesting enough. There seems to be enough positive information out there about it. It's worth trying. But the other stuff, like the really drastic stuff, I always tell people, like, really go slow and let stuff sit around for 10 years on the big drastic stuff, and see what the science is on it and things like that. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that's another thing that we do too. We look at all the data and all the science before we bring something to Next Health.
Yeah.
So that the stuff that we're providing you is actually vetted. You know what I mean? So
do you want to talk about NAD really quick?
Yeah.
Because I'm always fascinated. Is it really just that something can stimulate your body to make more NAD, right? You can't actually get NAD. Is that right? Or tell me, maybe you can explain it.
Yeah. So what you're doing with NAD is you're providing the precursor of the enzymes that create ATP inside of your mitochondria, right?
Right.
So you are actually providing NAD to the mitochondria, and that kind of revs them up. So mitochondria,
Jumpstart.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they're the powerhouses of our cells. The whole story of mitochondria is pretty interesting, actually. Do you know that mitochondria are synergistic organisms inside of us. Have you heard of that?
I mean, I've heard versions of that. Yeah.
So basically, when we were unicellular organisms,
Right.
the only way we were able to get to 2, 3, 4, 5 cells working together is we needed more energy. And mitochondria came inside of the single cellular organism. It's 2 separate organisms.
Right.
And they became the powerhouses of this. So they synergistically lived together, and that allowed us to become basically multicellular organisms. And that takes a lot of energy. And so like mitochondria are nuclear reactors, basically. But what happens as we age and over time is each one of our cells make less and less mitochondria, and those mitochondria get less efficient at doing their job. And so what NAD does is it's like you have a coal factory. It just dumps a whole bunch of coal into the factory,
Right.
so it can just have an abundance of precursor and create more energy. So
Amazing.
that's basically how it works.
And then what about for people, let's say, for example, you do live in Iowa and you can't get an NAD IV or whatever. What about those ingestibles that supposedly, there's some, how do you guys feel about that? And this is really, I'm asking as a consumer and person who get asked questions.
Right. No, there's a lot of good science around even NAD that you can take orally.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not going to be as bioavailable and at the same dose, but I think the science is panning out that even oral NAD is helpful. But like one thing I will say, and so if anyone is from Iowa that's listening to this, we're not picking on you guys.
No.
But like if you are in the middle of Iowa and you don't have access to NAD,
you just have really clean air and water, so you're ahead in so many other levels.
You're exactly so true. Even like we talked about earlier, just stressing your mitochondria with heat and cold, fasting, those stresses, those are good for your mitochondria. Not like get a divorce kind of a stress, but
we don't want that.
hormetic stress, you know? So any kind of little bits of stress you could put your body through, maybe go for a walk in the cold one of these days, or take a cold shower, or do a heat sauna, all that stuff kind of approximate what NAD does.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, we have a friend right now who's big into, he's messing around with autophagy.
Yeah.
Just a 4-hour window of eating.
Right.
And I have seen a huge physical shift in him. So instead of, just fasting, okay, so you have an 8-hour window, he's tightened his to 4.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting because he seems like he has quite a lot of energy. And he said he's sleeping well. His skin really does look amazing. Yeah. And that probably would put a pretty intense stress on the mitochondria, right?
It absolutely does.
I mean, a little boost. Maybe once in a while people experiment with that. I keep saying I want to try dry fasting once, but I haven't graduated to that. That one, don't take a shower, don't even brush your teeth.
Right.
And then definitely don't be by your family.
Right.
That would kill somebody, So I try that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll be trying that with myself either.
No, your kids are
pretty hardcore.
Hardcore. But I've checked into it enough that I'll, maybe when everyone's away, they'll be like, have you seen Gabby? I don't know. She's up there.
She's dry passing.
She's just stay away. Her breath is bad, and she's on a tear.
That's hilarious. Awesome. So, we're coming close to the hour. So I thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you.
I always like to ask a couple of questions towards the end of these things because it's super interesting. Do you have a morning routine?
I do, and this is not, trying to promote our coffee business, but I get up in the morning and I will try to sit quietly for 10 minutes in a breathing and active meditation. The other thing I want to encourage people is if they don't have a meditation practice, I call it active meditation. Anytime that you can be alone, or if you are alone, if you sort of find the way to center yourself with your breath, I think there's a way to be awake and around humans and in situations and still be centering and finding that center. So I try to do that. Some days I'm more successful than others. I will go downstairs and drink a giant glass, maybe 16 ounces of water with lemon, or we do actually have an Activate product that has lemon and cayenne pepper. Cayenne is a thermogenic, you have a thermogenic response, kind of boost you up, and some ginger and some minerals. And then I sit and have a very big glass of coffee with a bunch of fats in it for my husband, that he leaves all the ingredients in a cup because he's up an hour before me. Yeah. And I just put espresso, organic because fat and coffee together is different than just caffeine.
Right.
And so I didn't start drinking coffee until I was 45.
Oh, wow.
And then we got into this business, and Laird would be like, try this, try that, try this. And I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And I won't eat at least until 1. Mm-hmm. And some days if I'm feeling really good, so I'll train in the morning, and I'll push out lunch till about 1. But if I'm feeling like I can pull it based on stress and activity level, I'll actually try to wait at certain days and not eat until maybe 6 and have that 1 meal. Yeah. And I think I encourage people, a lot of times we do pre-decide, like, oh, this is my rest day. And on your rest day, you've got a bundle of energy. Yeah. Maybe train. Same with even intermittent fasting. There might be a day that you're like, you know what? Today's the day. I can do it today. So instead of sometimes pre-deciding, once you get into a place where you have enough discipline and connection with yourself, I think, kind of feel that out. And conversely, it could be a training day and you might wake up and go, I am genuinely tired and this will be the day I should take off. Right. I encourage people to get to that. So that I have a pretty basic routine in the morning.
Nice.
So I just got back from South Africa a couple of days ago.
Wow.
And it was an amazing trip. But we just coincidentally, we all like coffee and we're all, looking for a great coffee place in the area. And we found this place that was rated as the best coffee shop in the world. Amazing. By a pretty, I forget what the source was, but it was pretty reputable. Yeah. It was like literally number 1 on the list of coffee places in the world. So we all got super, it's called Truth Coffee in South Africa.
Even the name.
Yeah. True. And it was phenomenal.
Amazing.
But it was more about the experience. And there was a coffee roaster. Mm-hmm. Like the whole place, it's like they stepped out of a movie. This whole experience was, they were just all connoisseurs. And the coffee was delicious. Yeah. But I got to be honest. Mm-hmm. The Laird coffee, I swear to you, I'm not just saying this because you're here, is better by far. I am obsessed with your guys' coffee. So can we talk about that a little bit? I just had I love the turmeric. I'm not saying that just plug, like genuinely I would love to know a little bit more about the backstory of it. I want to say that
the premise of the business is from a genuine passion Laird has had for coffee, to use it for originally to get jacked up, right? Like Laird's like, I'm going surfing. And then Paul Chek, I don't know if you're familiar with who Paul Chek is. Paul Chek gave Laird ghee in coffee 16 years ago. Yeah. And Laird, I think he'd have beans flown from everywhere. Like he was serious. And I think Laird went, coffee for performance. Because when he goes to surf, sometimes even today, 5 and 6 hours straight. Wow. Gone. I mean, the output is radical, right? Yeah. So then we had a friend who was running a business of ours who's an entrepreneur. And after a few years of watching guys come over to our house to train, Laird, could you make me one of your coffees? He said, how hard can it be? And he said, do you mind if I try to get a sample made? And we went to powders because the oil was too difficult. You're not dealing with coconut oil and ghee and things. Sure. And so Laird Superfood was born out of that. But, the reason we don't have a vanilla creamer is because we can't get real vanilla for the cost that we can actually put it in the bag and ask people to pay for it. Mm-hmm. So we do our best to be sort of gatekeepers to like high level ingredients. The turmeric creamer came around because Laird is a really big advocate. He has turmeric flown to our house in a box that he juices with an angel juicer and drinks, and we have liquid black pepper. And if you mix it with a little bit of kombucha, it kind of makes it really good. Yeah. And so Laird Superfood was born out of Laird's first passion, which was coffee. So our coffees are Peruvian, organic, high altitude, low acidic. Mm-hmm. He was just there last week at the farm where they grow it. And then all the creamers, we have a factory in Oregon. We don't co-pack with anybody. They do everything themselves. And I think why it's doing so well is because it's an accident that came from a real passion. Right. And we also are really fortunate to have all the right people in the positions that we need for the company. So the whole idea is like, now I would want to get into adaptogens. I mean, we have mushroom powders, but I'm like, okay, great. Now we're going. Let's see if we can get adaptogens into people who don't even know what it is. Exactly. And it's a daily ritual.
Right.
So how do we take something they're already doing and improve upon that? So solve a problem. You talk to any business person, right? What problem are you solving? And so it's getting in there and doing that. And so the hope too is I want to get into Shilajit and, Laird makes this most people don't know what shilajit is. It's like black tar, and it smells disgusting. It actually tastes better than it smells. And Laird will make one with a cacao creamer and shilajit, and you can't even taste the shilajit. So my thing is like, now if the business, which is doing quite well, now we can start to play. Because would I not love to get people stuff in their coffee that's really good for them?
Right.
Yeah.
And so
microdose them with health.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's vegan. And, we use coconut sugar because it's the best we could find for flavor and the glycemic index. So for diabetics and things like that, the insulin response is certainly better. And I'm really excited. And when you say genuinely that you like the coffee, both Laird and I really enjoy that, because that's what we've enjoyed for so many years. And when our friends come over, that's what he's made for them for years.
Yeah. And I think the key is, you guys, number one, you're operating with integrity, and people know you. You come from this position where, Laird and you've already had this brand, this name, this following, this platform to promote from and speak from. And then now you layer in this product that's genuinely an incredible product that really can do good for people. And the fact that you're not willing to compromise your values, like not bringing in the vanilla or doing, like that's what we need. Because for me, even if I go to Whole Foods, like I don't know if everything that I'm getting is great.
Yeah.
Like I want to be able to just not have to spend a bunch of time and energy to think about it, figure it out, and just know this company operates with integrity. I know I can buy that product and it's going to be good for me, and I don't have to question it.
Yeah, and that's what we're actually hoping. And Laird is the kind of person who's like, I'll be out to sea. Like, he won't be messing around with business if it's not something that really reflects what he believes, or he just be like, I'm out, I'm good. Yeah. And actually what's so great is our CEO is very similar. And that's a pretty powerful place to come from. And then the tricky thing is, as the business grows and grows and grows,
how do you maintain that scale?
Tethered to your original values. But the reality is, we're at a time and a place and a space in this world where there's really no option. Everybody who does any type of business of any kind, whether it's you here providing services or us in coffee and other people in education, whatever it is, there's actually no more. If you're a new business, there is no alternative to the business practice. Right. We've seen that it could work for 30 years, but it doesn't work in the long run. And at the end of the day, I always am fascinated by people who will be like, I have all the money. And you go, yes, I get it. But the rain and the flood and the fire and all the stuff that's happening, or people who don't have are coming over your wall because you have so much. That imbalance, that story, that belief system, I think it's not sustainable.
Right.
So we'll be on, that's a great thing, is checks and balance. Like, it's like, oh, are we going to do that move? Maybe we're not going to do that move.
All right.
But the coffee is it's a gift. That has been a real gift to our family, and it's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
So I'm lucky enough to live in the same town with you, and so I got Laird Superfood creamer
a long time ago.
Yeah, all those. Or no, it's kind of Coogie's. That's where.
Old school.
Yeah, Coogie's restaurant. They would have it there at the coffee, and then that's like, I feel like I know where to get it. Of course, it's like in every store in Malibu. But where do people buy it if they're not in California?
They can go to lairdsuperfood.com because they also have like good membership and discount and reorder. Right. And then Amazon Prime certainly has it. So what I would do is I would go to Laird Superfood and like investigate all the products that are there. Like, there's HIGHX products, freeze-dried coconut that, and we're doing stuff for kids too. We have a mango pineapple hydrate. So it's very tropical for kids. So example, if you have a kid who's got soccer and they go, oh, I need electrolytes. We have things for that. And
you mean it's not Gatorade anymore?
That's the thing. You mentioned it, but sugar is the one.
Yeah.
It's just the one to watch out for, and it's just everywhere, and it tastes so darn good. Wow. And it's like, what do they say? 7 generations to get unaddicted from sugar.
That's so true.
It's so intense. Yeah. And so we're trying to be conscientious about that. Laird is very intense about sugar.
Yeah.
He's really, I'm, again, a little a little looser, not much, but he is like very hardcore. And then they're going into like 5,000 CVSs, if you can believe it.
Wow.
Meaning CVS, right? Like,
that's
yeah. So
but talk about going mainstream and,
well, that's the whole thing is we the people who already are aware of like, okay, sugar and real ingredients and 6 ingredients and 5 ingredients, they're way ahead. Mm-hmm. The people that we're interested in is, man, they can't navigate these questions.
Right.
And they are going to drink coffee. Could we give them a little support just in that experience?
Yeah.
And that would be like for me as a person who has so much access and the means for so much support. Mm-hmm. And I know how hard that is to have a family and work and take care of myself. So for people who are like working to, keep the lights on, and maybe they're a single parent and all this stuff, if we could give it to people like that, because it's like, hey, just 2% better.
Right.
Like I feel better, I'm more clear, my energy, even better. So I'm excited. That for me, because then again, you go back to contribution, participate. Right. Yeah. That means elevate each other. Not just like, well, they've got their trainer and they go to the farmer's market. It's like, they're way down the road. They're doing good. Yeah. What about those people who are like, yo, is this stuff bad for me? It's like, they don't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think for me, that's the stuff that's exciting.
That's so exciting. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for
Thank you.
doing this.
And congratulations on your place. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
And I will definitely be a customer because, I know better. And you guys know this because you have your own practice. And there are times where I'm like, yeah, you should do something else.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, I think this is one of my favorite podcasts that we've ever done. This is
that what you say to all the guests?
No, I haven't said that to all the guests. Maybe a couple. But you're the latest
As
one.
you
So
should.
this is my most favorite.
This is my favorite one today.
Right, yeah.
No, but this is awesome.
Thank you.
And I look forward to having you here and maybe do this again sometime.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.